I've had people tell me, whenever your name comes up in a conversation, they're like, he's been talking about this project for like 4 years. And so the imperative for me was to collect dirt at specific locations around the South. And I wanted to bring somebody along to help me document that trip. And so I asked Titus.
You know, there was an older woman that was just walking right there. Yeah, turn around. I'm a documentary photographer. Literally what I do is I try to find people that visually interest me. Just kind of do something like this. Yeah, okay, now, that's fine, but I need you to lean a little forward. What Dave and I do, I think that the other thing that we really connected on is that our work is about presenting this counter-narrative about situations and about people, about the world that we both live in.
So I'm Dave Alsobrooks.
I'm Titus Brooks Heagins, and my home is Durham, North Carolina.
So every spot that we stopped at had some significance to either of us. For me, the spots were about specific things that happened in Southern hip hop back in the 90s and bleeding into the 2000s a little bit. So a studio where something was recorded. So we're here at the world famous Stankonia Studios for the first stop, first sample collection for the Dirty South Art Project. And right inside here is where a lot of Southern hip hop history was made in the 90s and continues to be made to this day. And these collections of dirt at these specific spots are going into shrines that I'm building that revere these lyrics that I grew up with that were motivational for me. The reason I collected dirt was about the place. And back in the 90s, there was a certain tension in hip hop, right? It was New York City, where it started, then it was the West Coast, and then the South did their thing. And there was a specific moment when Outkast won a Source Award, and Andre 3000 said, "This is the South, we got something to say." And they were being booed because they won that award by the hip hop royalty. We're here at Tri-Cities High School, here on the spot where Andre 3000 and Big Boy met. Over my left shoulder, you can see a building on the 6th floor there was the Office for Organized Noise Productions. Here I'm at a house that was the original dungeon. Here's the final stop on the Georgia leg of the Dirty South Art Tour. I'm here in LaGrange, Georgia. I'm here on McCosh Mill Road. It's all about the place. Like, none of these things would have happened if people wouldn't have been in the places where they were. And that's why it's so prominently featured in each of the pieces. You have to look through the lyric to the place where it originated.
Well, he actually did a video edit. That's me. I didn't know that. And I've been here my whole life.
That was his tour of Gadsden.
So he did a tour when he first got famous?
It was all over Gadsden.
Yeah, we might need to open up a museum in the living room.
One of the things about anything about my life that's related to art is the fact that it was only a couple of years ago that I realized that I was a Southerner. One of the things that's very important about the South, and I think that we tend to forget now, is that the South is about the land. It's about the dirt. It's where our blood, it's where our sweat, it's where our tears, it's where everything that we are really about, where it all comes from.
I've tried to just investigate topics that I grew up with, and that means growing up in a town of 3,000 people in South Carolina and dealing with, you know, the tension that goes along with that on racial lines.
When I agreed to go on this trip with Dave, one of the things I knew was that we were going to be going to a lot of African-American neighborhoods. And the question for anyone that's black, you think, well, wait a minute, I'm going into these neighborhoods with this white guy. And the question for me is is this someone that is not going to say the wrong thing? And I knew that I could trust Dave in that as I walk up to people and I'm talking about photographing them, that Dave was never going to do anything stupid that was either going to put what I wanted to do in jeopardy. You have to feel comfortable with people that you're doing this kind of work with. And you're going to be in a car with someone for 5 days. You know,
definitely got comfortable.
You got to know them.
So the way the trip started was we flew out to Houston and we rented a car. We went to Home Depot, got some 5-gallon buckets and a shovel, and set out on our trip.
I never really photographed in Houston.
And I had no idea, I had no idea when I was like, we're gonna start in Houston, that I was gonna go to your neighborhood where you grew up.
Well, yeah, so I grew up in this small neighborhood, but I'd never photographed in my neighborhood. But I realized that much of my work comes out of the fact of that neighborhood. And it's about telling the truth about who poor people are. They're poor people who don't get much respect when they're outside of their community, but when they come back into their community, they're Mr., they're Reverend, they're leaders of the neighborhood. And so I have a tremendous respect for who they were and who they are. And my work is about showing that narrative.
We see a man walking with some children on the street, and Titus is like, I'd like to talk to him.
Go back to the store on the corner. That guy that's in the, has his t-shirt off. I really wanted to photograph him because he had these 3 kids. And I was
adorable.
Well, not only were they adorable, but they adored him.
Yes.
And in the conversation, it came out that he was a single parent. And so it reminded me of who I was. It was important to me to take his photograph because it worked to dispel the myths, the notions about black men and their children.
The trip for me was transformative in many ways. There were pieces that I was working on before we went on this trip that when I came back to them, they had a completely different meaning or a deeper meaning, or it changed the way that I present them and talk about them.
What are you feeling right now? Can you not talk?
I'll talk later. So I went to this place right after my 40th birthday. And I am 44. These lyrics started meaning something to me early on. I can remember in middle school getting into hip hop. The metal frames are this beautiful, shiny object that represents the music, but if you really delve into it, it's not about a chalice or a club or whatever. A lot of it is about motivating yourself, being yourself, not letting other people tell you who you are. And this, for whatever reason, call me crazy, like this project means a lot to me.
He understands and knows who I am, how I think about things. I understand and know who he is about things. I think it's very important when you talk about, when you use the word friends. And I talk to people very clearly when they say, well, you know, I've got black friends. And I say, well, wait a minute. When was have you ever invited them to your house for dinner? Did they come to your daughter's wedding? Did you go to their house for dinner? And most people will say no. I say, well, then that's actually a workmate that you have a relationship with. That's not a friend. And Dave and I have developed that sort of relationship. So for us to go through the South together without incidents, particularly in 2019, it talks about, to me, it says, maybe there is hope, or maybe The hope is that two people can get together and are willing to do something like that. And maybe that's where the hope comes from, is from the action.
We're at the grave, the resting place of the great Robert Johnson. And we want to do a libation toast to him and to all those who came before him and came after him in those traditions of the music, the original music here in the U.S. Somebody's still making the music, and I'm going to be there recording. I'm out.